with a playoff-like atmosphere expected in Denver. I'm going to tell you some names that you need to know and faces on that Jaguars defense that can make a difference this Sunday.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is all facts, man. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get it. Make sure you tap into that location so you do not miss an episode, whether you watch or listen. And when you get there, you'll hear me say this, that today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Shout out to the everydayers and those that make us your first listen each and every day. Also, make sure you check out our new Everydayers Club. You can get that in the description so you can get access to even more Locked On Podcast Network coverage and merch for about $5 a month. That's right. All right, listen. Here's what we're going to talk about. Obviously, everything is pointing towards Denver this week. With so much at stake, I'm going to tell you why. It's back to the future. I'm going to hit that in segment number 3. Faces of leaders down the stretch, the people that will make the difference and the impact. The Jaguars are really, really healthy on defense. We'll hit that. But the tone setters on defense is where I want to start, because we have been so enamored with and so focused on Trevor Lawrence and his top 3 or 4 type quarterback play the last month or so that we're forgetting about the defense, how they've stopped people. All we thinking about is 32 points per game that the Jaguars are averaging as of late last couple of months. They're doing their thing. Liam Cohen and Trevor are clicking. The offense is clicking. Brian Thomas Jr. is catching balls again, and Jacoby Myers is catching balls, and Travis Etienne is showing up like a top 7 running back this league in the National Football League, maybe even higher than that. The offensive line is getting after it and blocking people down the field, and we just forget sometimes to mention. I ain't going to say we forget it, but sometimes we fail to mention the importance of that defense under Anthony Campanile and how many faces that they have on that defense that are critically important to what they do and put out. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to sit here and talk about some of these people. You guys know how I feel about Travon Walker and Josh Allen. I just think they are absolute tone setters, along with Foyesade Oluokun in the middle. We ain't going to sit here and act like when those guys come out of the tunnel that the opposing coaches don't look and go, we got a problem. Because those guys give so much effort and hustle and football IQ every single play. Saw Travon bust through the line last week on a 4th down play and end all of that foolishness. That's just the things that they can do. And Josh Allen continues to chase quarterbacks around and to beat one-on-one coverage and cause a whole bunch of rigmarole for the opposing team's offense. And then Foyesade Oluokun, once again, over 100 tackles, just a tackling machine. And there's a lot of people that, for some reason, saying we got to move on. And I'm like, no, you cannot move on from Foyesade Oluokun this year. But those aren't the only guys. Those are not the only players. The role players, before I mention the other 4 or 5 lead players who I'll get into in segment 2, I'm going to skip past them. And I'm going to mention some role players because Devon Hamilton, whether you know it or not, has played absolute lights out. The Jaguars have the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL, and that's for a reason. And I know folks can talk to matchups and, well, people think they can throw on them and this, that, and the third, but make no mistake about it. Devon Hamilton has played very, very well and has been given a lot of credit by a lot of the dudes that watch tape. Antonio Johnson. He's another one. And I think it was either Eric Murray or Jordan Lewis was talking about him yesterday, saying I think it was Eric Murray talking about how he's just a big, strappy, strong kid. That is the epitome of player development, if you ask me. He was underdrafted, in my opinion, in the 5th round. I thought he should have been the 3rd round pick. And a lot of people were surprised that he was still on the board. Trent Baalke, I can give you this from behind the scenes a little bit. Trent Baalke, on that draft day, did call around and ask people, why is he still here? at Texas A&M. I knew somebody was on the staff, and they told him, you better hurry up because the Giants just called and they're about to take him, or something like that. Or the Giants just called, they want to move up to get him, or you can check out the draft order or whatever to verify that, but I don't need to because somebody was on staff with me, and they told me this that night. That's a good pick because he has all the tools. People thought he was just a box safety, man. He is rangy, and he is showing himself to be someone that the Jaguars can actually depend on. I'm going to mention Monteric Brown too, because Monteric Brown has played extremely well for the Jacksonville Jaguars whenever he needed to. I know there's some people I missed. I'm going to get to them in segment 2 because they are the other faces. I just mentioned most of the leaders on that defense, and I went around them to get to some of the role players on that said defense. Dewey Wingard, there's another one. And I love the fact that whenever a team wins, you can start pointing out contributions from all of these dudes. And just imagine now, in the past, there were a lot of times these guys were considered the leaders and the best players on the team, and now they're the third-level role players that I'm mentioning. Dewey Wingard in some games last year was the saving grace why the Jaguars were even close and won some games. On special teams, also just continued to play hard even when things were going bad. But now you're now seeing a redistribution of the talent where he is where he actually needs to be, and that is in a complementary role. But it is also important when they blitz him off the slot or he makes a tackle out in the flat. He's a glue guy, and that's a good thing to have. There are other leaders on this team, though. Eric Armstead is one. He's played extremely well. All of the reserve young defensive linemen that we've been talking about on the end, as well as in the interior, when they get their number called, they seem to deliver. But in segment 2, I'm going to focus on anybody not named Josh Allen, Travon Walker, or Foyesade Oluokun. Because there's a second tier of guys that also have leadership qualities. That's where you see these dudes talking to each other a lot. That's where you see the presence on the field actually elevates this team. So we're going to hit that, and we're going to discuss that and make sure we peel all of that off before we get to Back to the Future. And I'll tell you what that's all about. We'll get to it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. As soon as you see one of those dudes on the team that you rooting for or against limp off that field, you know he might be questionable to come back. And that affects the game, and you can jump on it right then because FanDuel is quick to the switch, man. They'll switch them odds up on you real fast, so you try to beat it to the punch during your live action. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, all of it. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or momentum flips after a turnover. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Y'all know my name. They call me T-Wig. Some people call me Tony Wiggins, all of that. That's what we're going to do. Look, if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, even our merch store. Make sure you tap in for just $5 a month. This is still what it always has been. You got access to this daily show. That's just a little extra for you and some of the perks that come along with being a faithful member of Locked On. Leadership, the faces. You've had a bunch of people that had to do it differently. Josh Allen has been a mainstay because he's been there. Foy has been there. But you had some time without Trevon, who's your other leader and face of the franchise. Sometimes leaders aren't dudes that talk a lot. Sometimes leaders are dudes that lead in silence and lead privately, and you can tell that they have the respect of their team. And one of the things that I spoke about when the Jaguars went out and got both Eric Murray and Jordan Lewis in free agency. When I watched their specific tape, I said they're effort guys. They don't stop moving. They don't stop running. Just when you think they're out of position, they keep running, and then boom, late hands, they come in and make a play. Late hands, late feet, whatever. That comes with confidence. It also comes with hunger and desire, and they play and lead by example. Even when Jordan Lewis was out, I didn't see Eric Murray as much because I think he was dealing with something real, real serious with his neck, and he was unsure of whether he was going to keep playing this year or not. But I always saw Jordan Lewis on that sideline, and you can see him out there on the field. And if you noticed the other day, and now I know it was with the Jets, Eric Murray was flying around that field, flying, closing the gap on receivers and running backs when they thought they were going to get loose and get around the edge. And Jordan Lewis is always where he's supposed to be and makes throws really, really difficult. He's a window closer, if you ask me. He knows where it is. He's seen it. So those two guys are the leaders and the faces of the leaders down the stretch, guys that are going to make plays for this team that I wouldn't necessarily say that they're behind the first three, which is Josh, Travon, and Foy. I would say that those two are basically the captains of the back end. And they are names that you need to know, because with so much talk about the Denver Broncos and all of their players that they have on defense, and rightfully so, Nick Bonito and, of course, Pat Surtain Jr., Allen, the defensive lineman, those guys can all play. Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, those guys get after it, right? But we got our own share of players that get after it. By the way, the Jaguars are leading the league in run defense. So I think this is a pretty decent matchup in terms of being able to get after Bo Nix, confuse him a little bit. And some of those dudes that I mentioned are going to have a lot to do with that, and extremely lot to do with it. A couple of other names that I'm going to mention, and these are the dudes that they're in that second level, that second tier of faces and leaders of playmakers. But I held these two dudes out just for this reason. I got a feeling that both Jarian Jones, and he has come up huge lately, and all of those people that tweeted that they got their, they get a wedgie because they keep thinking about college footballs, right? And people that are collegiate fans of teams that oppose certain players that come from certain schools. I get accused of being biased all the time, but anybody that knows me close enough knows once a guy leaves college, I root for them all. I don't care if you played for my mortal enemy. I do not carry that like that because, well, I know too many kids that have gone and played for schools that I didn't particularly root for. In fact, my best friend is one of the 5 or 6 best players that ever played basketball at the University of Florida. But I'm talking to a lot of people that always want to run Jarian Jones out of town. Jarian Jones is a good football player. Do you hear me? He is a really, really good, hard-nosed, effort football player. Body type as well as style of play is just like Jordan Lewis and Eric Murray. Same thing. You can't, I promise you, if you took the numbers off of their shirt, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And he fits what they want to do. Monteric Brown, you can add him in there a little bit. He's a little longer than Jarian, but you can add him in there too. These guys are all just, they have a body type, they have a type, but more so than anything, they have a type on the inside. They have guys that will run through a brick wall, that are always on go, that are football playing Jesse's on that defense. And I love it because you get the chance to see all of these things tie together, especially when the Jaguars are healthy. And I have been talking about the fact that this defense is healthy for 2 weeks and how they come into this stretch run down the stretch, this run down the stretch in a very, very good spot injury-wise. It doesn't always guarantee victory because you obviously need to go out and execute. But to me, they're going to be able to put their best foot forward without making any excuses on the defense because they are ready to go. But I got to tell you, Jarian Jones is one. The other one is Devin Lloyd. People keep forgetting that Devin Lloyd was on his way to having an all-pro season before he sat out and had to sit out for a while with injuries. He missed a few weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But since he's been back, he has been all over the football field, being the same menace that he was before he got injured. This is why I believe the Jaguars have such a good chance, man. They got a shot because they got a bunch of guys on their defense that all complement each other very, very well, and they tie in and fit each other to a T. They fit the personality of Anthony Campanile, and the way that they play defense really, really does complement the offense. If I wasn't a Jaguar fan, and I try to do this as objectively I can because I host another show that is an overall NFL show, and every now and then I get a chance to peacock a little bit because I covered the Jags, and I'm grateful for that. But I really try to look at this with all objectivity and subjectivity and go, are they good? What do they do right? What do they do bad? Even when the Jaguars were winning back in the day, they were 8-3. Y'all remember, if you've been here long enough, you saw me come on here and say, we got a problem. Like I kind of noticed it before the 49ers game a couple of years ago, but that game really let me know. And the reason why that game let me know too is because I saw what I saw. Every team couldn't do that to them, but they were going to try. So when you really looked at it, yeah, they're going to try to do that. And the fact that they're going to try to do it means they're probably going to be successful because the Jaguars just were not talented enough and good enough once their weaknesses were exposed to stop anybody from challenging them and being able to do it, especially when you didn't have the kind of coaching, you didn't have the kind of play calling sequences, you didn't have the mindset and the preparation offensively or defensively that you have now. You had a bunch of people trying to commit or do things the way that they wanted to do it to show that it basically wasn't their fault that the team wasn't successful. That's called problem solving as more than it is solution finding. Now we have solution finding. What are the answers? What do we want to do? What are we good at? And how can we incorporate what we do to make it work for us, especially in tough situations? And granted, this is a tough situation. I don't know if y'all know this, but Denver right now is tied with New England for the AFC number one seed in the playoffs. If they end up in a tie with New England, I got this from a man, Kevin Oestreicher, on Locked On NFL. If they end up in a tie, they're going to get home field. New England has to go play the Baltimore Ravens this week, and the Ravens team that's still playing for something. And New England's coming off of a loss, right? One that they had a big lead in, and they lost the game. It's going to be tough, man, but look, we got to handle our business. If the Jaguars go out and win this game and then win the last two and end up in a tie with all three of those teams, then you might see the Jaguars being talked about as being the number one seed. You never know how that's going to go, man. We'll just have to wait and see. We ain't going to count our eggs before they hatch. But at the end of the day, I think the Jaguars are still in the catbird seed to win the division. But I think they have to win this game this Sunday. And I think it'll set the tone for the rest of the season and in the playoffs. And then you'll start hearing everybody. Well, maybe not everybody. There's one Hall of Fame DB that might not say anything about the Jaguars being formidable, but that's neither here nor there. But this game in Denver has a little bit of memory attached to it. Kind of reminds me of another game in Denver. In fact, two games in Denver, but I'll talk about one in particular. That's the Jimmy Smith game where he looked like he was overthrown and then he caught a ball in the end zone. That is the game where the Jacksonville Jaguars back in the day went out and beat the Denver Broncos and advanced in the playoffs. It has that little bit of a feel to it. We'll discuss that more in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Rocket Money. There it is, man, Rocket Money. Ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there, and suddenly the numbers in your bank account don't match the numbers in your head. Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and stay in control of your finances, because managing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress less. Rocket Money finds subscriptions you forgot you were paying for and helps you clean them up quickly. I actually was paying for something 3 times because of all of these little different bundles they have out there, and Rocket Money cleaned that up for me. Having the app find good times to save each month keeps you consistent with your financial goals. Ain't that the truth? Take time out and take control of your finances and cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. All right, moving and grooving here. Third and final segment as we proceed to give you what you need here on Locked On NFL to get you through the week. Talking about the Jaguars defense today, the faces, the names, the people that make this thing tick. Is it Jacksonville? No, I don't know if they have the flair and that alpha dog mentality, but sometimes you don't need all of that, right? You don't need too much of it because, as we saw, it'll spill over and it could kind of like get off the rails if you don't have the right leadership. And we saw that happened the last time. But what we do have, they do have frontline players. They do have Josh Allen. They do have Travon Walker. They do have that leader at linebacker. And they do have a really, really talented Devin Lloyd. And then in the secondary, they got a bunch of complementary parts that just know and understand their assignment. They communicate well. They tackle well in space. And they cover well enough that the pass rush is usually able to get home. Plus, with the offense putting up points, they're now putting pressure on the other team to have to come out of the shell on offense, right? So they're very, very similar. I think they're more similar to the old Jaguar teams on defense. The one back in the late 90s that went to Denver and won a game. Not quite so much on offense, although Brian Thomas Jr. and Jacoby Myers, they can do some of the things that Keenan and Jimmy did, especially with BTJ being back and seemingly healthy and a little bit more confident. And then Jacoby Myers actually does remind me of Keenan McCardell because he catches everything and he's always open and he's a very, very easy target. So offensively, there's some similarities. Now, in the running back situation, Travis Etienne has played lights out this year. Is he those other guys from back in the day? Probably not, but he doesn't have to be because the game has kind of changed a little bit. But he is explosive, and you saw it last week. 3 touchdowns in the passing game from Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is more talented than Mark Brunell. I think the offensive line, while they're not as talented with, of course, Big Bo and Cersei, they have this continuity about themselves and this drive and this want to, and they're really, really athletic. They run around a lot on the field and get downfield and make a lot of good blocks. I am super, super, super confident in Liam Cohen's ability to go out to Denver and manipulate or manipulate the offense to the point where it is extremely successful against the Denver Broncos and put some pressure on them. I think they go out there and score some points. You've seen Green Bay, they scored points this week. As good as Denver's defense has been, the Jaguars can still go out and score points. I think right now they believe they can probably score points on anybody. Guys like Parker Washington and Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick used to play in Denver. He gets a little bit of a chance to have some revenge. But I really do believe that Denver's going to have a hard time running the ball. I think the Jaguars are going to place the onus on Bo Nix to beat him. And as long as they don't get beat with his legs, don't get outflanked. Make sure you set the edge and don't let him outside because you know Sean Payton is going to draw some stuff up. I think you get out in front of them and then you make Denver catch up. And it'll start reminding me a little bit of when Mark Brunell and Jimmy and Keenan and the crew and Baselli and Cersei and all those boys went out to Denver back in the day. Could it be deja vu? Could be. People say, Wig, you need to save it for the real playoffs, though. No, because if they win this game, I want the real game to be here in Jacksonville. I'm trying to tell you, that's where I'm going. This needs to be the game that they go out and win in the regular season. And if we see them again, them Buffalo, whoever they want to match up, Houston, I kind of want that game. I want it to be right down here. Wouldn't it be beautiful if they beat Denver? Let's just say they end up with the 2 seed somehow, right? They host a playoff game where they beat whoever it is, whether it's Buffalo, Denver, or whatever. They win in the divisional round. Well, they win in the first round. Then they win the second round at home. I'm telling you, man, this would be sweet. This would be sweet. I want the game to be here in Jacksonville. But if it's not, if it is in Foxborough, You realize that'll be the third time the Jaguars go to the AFC Championship game and end up playing in Foxborough against the Patriots. But this time it'll be without Tom Brady. It'll be without Bill Belichick. As much respect as I have for Mike Vrabel and as much respect as I have for Drake May, I would think that the Jaguars will have a pretty good damn chance in that scenario. You're talking about Miles Jack wasn't down. You're talking about David Garrard having a really, really good game, but Tom Brady going 26 out of 28. And then you go way back before that. This will actually be the third time they would lose or play. They've lost 3 times. This would be the 4th time that they would go to New England to play a playoff game. But the other 2 times the Jaguars organization has been to the AFC Championship game, it ended in Foxborough. Remember Mark Brunell on a 4th down incompletion from about the 20-yard line? The Jaguars get a chance to go back to the future, if you will, and just slay so many demons and dragons. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I'm telling you, whether they win this game this weekend, whether they get the number 1 seed or not, there is blue sky in front of you for a whole bunch of good things to happen for this football team. I want y'all to celebrate the fact that it's December 16th, and we are not talking about draft picks. We are not talking about free agency. We are talking about real football in December and January with an actual shot at being able to win all of this stuff. And that continues this weekend in Mile High. We are going to have the crossover on Thursday. I'll have another show tomorrow on Wednesday where I talk about the offense and the coaching and what the strategy will be and how I think this game's going to go. We'll have the crossover edition with Locked On Broncos on Thursday. And then on Friday, I'll give you a show that's really, really predictive and get down to the specifics of exactly how the Jacksonville Jaguars can win this game. And if they do, what you should expect over the last couple of weeks of the NFL season. At this point, I'm already saying it. It's 12 games at least. 13-4, 12-5, 13-4 if they handle business this weekend and just keep making the main thing, and that is the thing that is next. The main thing is the main thing here on Locked On NFL and Locked On Jaguars. Make sure if you never miss an episode, if you're the type to never miss one, then it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everyday Club and get ad-free audio access to our members-only Discord and more, even our merch store for about $5 a month. You can get that. Also, if we have made your list for where you listen to podcasts, make sure you screenshot that and send that to Locked On Podcast, our main page on social media. They're going to send you a Q code. That's right. You get a little Q code to make sure that you get hooked up with Locked On Jaguars and Locked On NFL on our Everydayer Club. All right, man, you guys take care of yourself. We'll see you tomorrow as the Jaguars are playing meaningful football and they're building up to something that might be special. We'll talk to you next time. We appreciate you spending 28 minutes with us here today. Thank you for joining us on Locked On Jaguars.